Poland has survived more wars than almost any other country in Europe, but now it's bracing again. A recent rail sabotage that could have killed hundreds, spy networks on its soil, and a Kremlin campaign that Tusk said has now crossed a critical threshold. But instead of cracking, Poland is getting tougher. So has Putin pushed too far? Are his sabotage attempts turning Poland into the state most willing to stand up to the Kremlin? And could Poland ever take on Russia alone? Poland's military build-up is staggering. One of the largest armed forces in Europe, it's the third biggest in NATO and behind only Turkey and the United States. Since 2022, Poland has become one of NATO's leading voices. Poland's defence spending is soaring. It will hit 4.7% of GDP in 2025. The UK, by comparison, spends 2.4%. It has 10 times more artillery in the United Kingdom. It has 3 times more tanks now, and by 2030, that number will be nearly 5 times greater. It has 6 mechanised armoured or cavalry divisions and still expanding. And again, by comparison, the UK, we barely have 2 divisions. It just signed a $6.5 billion deal with South Korea to purchase additional K2 tanks. And of course, it's backed by the full weight of the NATO alliance. All of this while it's also sending supplies to Ukraine. We're now going to do a side-by-side comparison of Poland and Russia. Now, Poland doesn't outgun Russia yet. Well, frankly, few countries can. But what matters is the speed and the focus of Poland's rearmament. Along with the Baltics, Poland is the only country in Europe that's getting ready for war with Russia on a question of not if, but when. The net effect of every bit of pressure that Putin throws against Poland is actually not to make Poland weaker, but make it stronger. Poland, from its recent history and the threats that Russia has made to it in the past, is well aware of what might happen to it if it came again under Russian control or Russian influence. And that is something they're not prepared to allow. And it also points the finger, helping other countries to understand the threat against them. Under its leadership, countries such as the Baltics and Germany are now starting to rearm and to reorganise themselves. But it's very much Poland in the lead, and other countries are now following. If we look at some of the detail on this, let's look firstly at the fighter aircraft. While the disparity in numbers is large, Poland is acquiring F-35 Alphas. The first one arrived in August 24, and the full complement of 32 aircraft will be complete by 2030. It replaces Poland's ageing MiG-29s left over from the Cold War days and is a qualitative leap forward from a 4th to a 5th generation aircraft. Russia's latest aircraft is the MiG-35. Now, there's much debate over whether this is a brand new aircraft or simply an upgrade of the MiG-29. But what you can see with this aircraft is they've changed their approach. So rather than being an aircraft that's centrally controlled, the pilot and its operators are able to acquire targets and engage much more independently than before. This is a qualitative change for the Russians itself. If we turn now to armoured vehicles, there have been major tank losses in Ukraine. Allegedly, the Russians are even bringing out old Second World War II stock from out of storage. Poland, in the meantime, is buying brand new South Korean K2 tanks and Abrams, amongst the finest tanks in the world. If we look at personnel, again, there's a big difference in total numbers, but the geography is different too. Now, Poland has around 200,000 active troops and is still expanding its military. It has 6 mechanised and armoured divisions, and they're concentrated on one front line facing Belarus and Kaliningrad, so they can mobilise fast. Polish forces are now trained and equipped to NATO standards, and with recent experience in hybrid warfare gained from supporting Ukraine. Russia has far larger numbers on paper, but its forces are spread across a vast territory, some 12 different time zones, and its best infantry units have taken serious losses in Ukraine. It relies heavily on conscripts with limited training, struggles with morale and logistics, and will take much longer to move reinforcement towards Poland's border. In terms of mobile rocket projectors, artillery and missile systems, Poland is getting the HIMARS system, which has proven very successful in Ukraine. It's been used to destroy Russian headquarters, force Russians to move their supply lines, and hit deep behind enemy lines. So while we can see that Poland is rearming and rearming fast, There is still the issue of time and time pressure. I'll use the example of the F-35s. It's going to get its full complement of F-35s by 2030, but many commentators, including the Prime Ministers of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, have warned that Russia could be ready for a war with NATO as soon as 2027. That means the drive to rearm is under a significant and maybe even unrealistic time pressure. Poland has now introduced a program, a widespread program, that's going to encompass some hundreds of thousands of its population, giving them some basic lessons on survival, on first aid, and indeed for those who it's appropriate, military training as well. All of this helps to create a society that's robust and resilient and can take whatever shocks Putin and his allies choose to throw at them. The numbers to be trained are very impressive. Between now and 2027, the Polish state intends to train some 400,000 of its citizens, anything from school children through to old age pensioners. Poland's ambitions don't stop there. Poland has asked actively to seek its own nuclear weapons. It has signalled its readiness to host NATO nuclear weapons, similar to Belgium, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands and Turkey. Their aspiration is also to be protected under the UK and French nuclear umbrellas. So it may rely on others for nuclear protection, but the message to Moscow is absolutely clear. Poland is ready. We should have no doubts about the way in which Putin views this.
Собираемся воевать с Европой, я уже об этом 100 раз сказал. Но если Европа вдруг захочет с нами воевать и начнет, мы готовы прямо сейчас. Если Европа вдруг захочет начать с нами войну и начнет ее, то очень может быстро произойти ситуация, при которой нам не с кем будет договариваться.
Interestingly, unlike his actions in the Ukraine, where he talked about a special military operation, Putin very clearly used the Russian word for war. Putin has, of course, turned his country into a wartime economy. Some 40% of all government expenditure now goes on military spending, some 8% of its GDP. I think the challenge for Putin is going to be this. Having achieved whatever he can achieve in Ukraine, what's he do with the rest of his economy? Because they'll still remain under sanctions. And there I think is the danger for us. Putin will have this armed force and he won't have anything else to do with it. And I think that's when he'll be tempted for some further adventurism. Now in this series we're looking at each country's wild card, a unique advantage that shapes its power. For Poland, it's speed. It's rearming faster than anyone in Europe, acting like the war could start next week. Not because it wants one, but because history has taught it what happens to a country that's weak or divided. That sense of identity, forged through invasion and survival, drives everything it does. And Poland's not just buying weapons, it's building them. Factories are turning out tanks, missiles and ammunition at a pace that Europe hasn't seen in decades. As you can see, Poland is absolutely a frontline state. It sits on the edge of NATO. It sits wedged between the Belarus and Kaliningrad, which is Russia's heavily armed exclave on the Baltic. Poland will be inevitably the first line of defence against any Russian aggression. It is both symbolically and strategically crucial, the place where World War III would likely start if Russia pushed west. Sitting between Russia and Belarus, Poland had no option but to rearm. And it's been able to do so thanks to its booming economy. Since joining the European Union in 2004, Poland's economy has grown by an average of 4% by year. Bottom line, Poland's getting richer and fast. And that money is being poured straight into tanks, jets and troops. The strong military and strong economy means that Poland's on course to be, if not already, the strongest European power in NATO. Instead of being rule takers, they're becoming rule makers, and Europe will need to adjust. Some suggest that Poland, by building up an army some 10 times larger than Britain's, is gearing up for World War III. If that war ever starts, these are the flashpoints the world will be watching. The first is the Suwalki Gap between Belarus and Kaliningrad, and this remains NATO's main concern, because an attack on that axis there would cut off the Baltic states from Poland, making it very hard to defend and reinforce them. We then have a possible direct Russian attack on the Baltic states itself, again a possible flashpoint. And we've also got the course of ongoing Russian subversion and sabotage operations throughout Europe. More recently, we've seen air and missile incursions testing NATO's defences, raising the possibility of a miscalculation and a greater war as a result. We've then got the consequences of a possible Russian retaliation if an aircraft, missile or drone is shot down. Observers are also looking ahead to exercise Zapad 2027. The Zapad series is a series of joint Russian-Belarusian drills, but the fear always that Russian forces may not withdraw afterwards, as was seen during the invasion of Ukraine. Poland, a host to US missile defences and thousands of troops, makes it a prime Russian target, and therefore a World War III flashpoint. If we want to understand why Poland's arming like this, we need to understand what built this mindset. Centuries have been attacked, divided, ignored and repressed. In the 18th century, there was a partition. Poland was divided and erased from the map for over a century by Russia, Prussia and Austria. With the fall of communism in 1989, the Solidarity movement, led by Lech Walesa, broke Soviet power. And in 1993, finally, the last Russian troops left Poland. Within years, Poland had joined NATO. This move, curiously, was initially supported by Russian President Yeltsin, but was later opposed by Moscow when they realised that Eastern Europe would no longer be under their control and influence. From then on, Poland has become NATO's eastern cornerstone and Russia's nightmare. Centuries of invasions have left Poland with one mindset: never get caught off guard and never rely on anyone else. For Putin, Poland represents everything that Russia hates. A former Soviet state that broke free from Russia, now rich, confident and fiercely pro-West. Only 2% of Poles have a positive view of Russians, which is the lowest of any country in the world. Rather bizarrely, Putin even blames Poland for starting World War II, claiming that Poland pushed Hitler into it. Russia, of course, has attacked Poland many times in the past. But to add to that list of horrors, Putin now accuses Poland of shaping Ukrainian national identity. He claims that they inculcated in the Ukrainians the idea that they were a separate country and not part of his Great Russia project, which has Russia, Ukraine and Belarus all part of the Great Mother Russia itself. Any major Russian attack would likely come through Belarus, as it did during the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Russia currently has 2 permanent military sites in Belarus and is reportedly building another, which might possibly be used for holding strategic missiles. Turning now to Kaliningrad, the exclave there is heavily armed, hosting all branches of the Russian military, including the Baltic Fleet, tactical nuclear weapons and advanced electronic warfare systems. The Suwalki Gap is a narrow corridor 40 miles long between Kaliningrad and Belarus, and as we talked about earlier, is regarded as NATO's most vulnerable point. Russia captured it, it would cut off Poland from the Baltic states, making them extremely difficult to defend. Vladimir Putin may have hoped to intimidate Europe, but instead he's awoken its sleeping giant. Once erased from the map, Poland has quietly become Europe's rising power, rich, armed and unafraid. Its economy is booming, its military is growing faster than anyone else's, and it's no longer just following NATO's lead, it's helping to shape it. But as Russian drones cross its skies and troops mass just over the border, that pressure is mounting. Each incursion, each provocation is a test. How far can Putin go before NATO pushes back? But Poland isn't backing down, it's digging in. In so doing, it's not just defending its own border, but the whole of NATO's. And if Moscow ever crosses that line, the next world war might begin right here in Poland.